Hey guys, today we're going to be going over the destruction in Battlefield 2042. It is mostly going to be laid out like the previous destruction videos, but I'm going to be here to insert some commentary here and there to better explain some of the systems and comparisons to previous games. So let's get into it. An interesting thing to note is that the grenade launcher in 2042 acts completely different than it did in Bad Company 2. As you can see in the video, the grenade launcher kind of has an arming distance, and I don't know if it's actually possible to destroy buildings with a grenade launcher. I tested it quite a bit, and I wasn't able to get anything out of it. So certain buildings in Battlefield 2042 will collapse, and it's mostly just dedicated to Arica Harbor here and on some of the Battlefield 3 remade maps in Portal. I don't believe buildings in the Battle of the Bulge collapse. I think they work more or less the exact same as they did in Battlefield 5, where it left sort of the inner part of the building. But yes, Battlefield 2042 does have buildings that do collapse, just not on the main maps. So destruction on Manifest is a little interesting. Only the main buildings at the B flags in normal Conquest are destructible. Now, they aren't fully destructible. They have these metal black walls that don't seem like they can be destroyed whatsoever. The normal gray walls, however, you can destroy pretty much every part of them, but you can't collapse the buildings at all. As you can see throughout this clip, you can destroy a lot of things on the outside of these buildings, but you can't destroy all of the walls like you can on the factories, and you can't destroy the buildings fully. One interesting thing worth noting here is that you can actually destroy the inside walls on these buildings, which I wasn't aware of. It marks pretty much the only time, to my knowledge, that you can destroy interior walls in an actual destructible building in Battlefield history. In Battlefield 3 Close Quarters expansion, you could destroy a lot of inside walls, but you were mainly inside of a structure that you couldn't leave. So this is the first time in what I think is a fully destructible build, or fully destructible in quotes, building, that you can destroy the inside walls, so that's pretty neat. So the example I'm showing for factory destruction on Discarded is pretty much the same factory destruction you'll see on Orbital. They are the same models, so they use the exact same destruction profiles. And it works pretty much the same as factories have always worked in Battlefield. They've always been structures that couldn't be collapsed. They could pretty much destroy every wall surrounding the building, but the structure itself remains intact. So I've seen a lot of people saying that they don't know where this entirely destructible village is on Hourglass, and it's right here. Every building in this area can be destroyed almost completely, to the point where there is absolutely no cover left whatsoever. And it provides a very responsive system. You can pretty much destroy everything here. So you can see here with the terrain deformation that the craters are actually quite good in this game. I think they're a big step up from Battlefield 5's weird terrain decals, where the craters weren't actually in the ground, they were on top of the terrain. It kind of created an okay effect, especially when some heavy bombers would create giant craters, but they weren't in line with, say, Bad Company 2 or especially Battlefield 1's deep, deep craters. This game, while the craters are quite deep, they aren't as deep as you could make them in Battlefield 1, but in terms of overall terrain deformation, I think this game has a lot of upsides. Now, one of the upsides I'm going to mention is that not only can you destroy grasslands, you can destroy the pavement, which is an interesting thing because, to my knowledge, in past Battlefield games, you weren't able to destroy roads quite as significantly as you can destroy them in 2042, and I may be wrong on that. But the decal for destroying roads in 2042 is actually really, really good. It looks really nice. You can make them quite deep depending on the vehicle or the weapon that you're using, so that's a plus for this game. It's worth noting that depending on the terrain that you are exploding, and this has always been a problem in the Battlefield series, certain areas are not allowed to have terrain deformation. As you can see while I'm shooting the runway here on Orbital, you can't really create craters in areas DICE doesn't want you to, so it does create a bit of a problem with responsiveness where you kind of expect maybe, hey, I could probably make somewhere for me to lay in here, but you can't. I think it's a good word of thumb to note that if you're in the grass, you can probably create craters, and if you're not, odds are you probably can't. So in terms of foliage and bush destruction in Battlefield 2042, it probably features the best in the entire series. Now, there has been no instances of trees and or bushes in this game that you cannot destroy. I've tested them on multiple maps, and you're only seeing footage of Orbital in this video, but I can assure you that there has not been a single tree that I've been unable to destroy in this entire game, which is quite remarkable when you consider that even Bad Company 2 had some trees you couldn't destroy. And obviously, I was quite miffed in Battlefield 5 to find out you couldn't destroy bigger trees at all. So 2042 has made quite a leap in regards to foliage destruction, which is quite nice, actually. So urban destruction is an interesting thing in Battlefield 2042. Kaleidoscope and Hourglass both feature giant skyscrapers, which in Battlefield have always been sort of a weird topic when it comes to destruction. In Battlefield 4 especially, skyscrapers for the most part were entirely non-destructible. Obviously discounting the Shanghai Tower, which was a scripted destruction event and not something the player could just destroy bits and pieces of. What we have in Battlefield 2042, while not amazing, breathtaking, next generation destruction for skyscrapers, it is a step in the right direction. While Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 featured skyscrapers, Battlefield 3 did have some taller buildings you could destroy the facade on, but bigger skyscrapers such as the hotel on Gulf of Oman were completely non-destructible. So Battlefield 2042 is the first Battlefield game to actually feature some sort of responsiveness for shooting rockets at the side of buildings. This, however, is limited. As you can see in this video, the buildings that aren't a part of the actual play space do not destroy like the ones that are. This is a bit of a problem when it comes to overall responsiveness of the destruction. The problem with the consistency is that when a player shoots the side of a building that's in the play space and they see the windows explode and the big explosion and the fancy particles and stuff like that, they say great. And if they try shooting a building that's right next to it that isn't a part of the play space, it does nothing. That creates a bit of a consistency problem with the destruction overall. That said, on Kaleidoscope specifically in this video, there are bits of the skyscraper you can actually break off, including this sign here at the top of this building. It's also worth noting that while 2042 doesn't feature any sort of Levolution, there are bigger destruction events, such as the rocket being destroyed on Orbital, or the sandstorm on Hourglass, but you can see here on Kaleidoscope you can actually destroy this giant antenna on the top of this building, which I believe is the A2 point on Conquest, which doesn't fall the exact same way every time. I think there may be 4 or 5 different variations in the direction at which it will fall, and it will create cover for players who are on the ground below, and it will kill anybody who's below it. So miscellaneous destruction is an interesting one because it's mostly just objects. Now, objects are important for creating a consistent experience when it comes to destruction. Stuff like these giant towers on Orbital that you can explode. These silos here on Renewal, which you can also destroy. These gas tanks also on Renewal, but also on a couple of other maps, which you can also destroy. Fences, posts, anything that pretty much gets in a tank's way can be destroyed. Also, as you can see here, shooting certain objects such as couches, tables, chairs, what have you, can all be destroyed using bullets and or explosives, which is nice. It's sort of the system a bit between Battlefield 4 and Battlefield Hardline, which is quite nice. So overall, the destruction in Battlefield 2042 is actually quite a lot better than I think most people give it credit for. While it does have a problem with consistency, and also buildings that are the exact same as the building right next to it, which one can be destroyed and the other one can't, the destructibility is actually quite good overall. The terrain destruction and foliage destruction are probably the best that Battlefield 2042 has to offer. However, that's not to say that building destruction is any bit bad. The problem with destruction overall in Battlefield 2042 is that the maps do not feature destructible buildings very much. And I know people can say, well, that's because the destruction in Battlefield 2042 stinks, but that's not the case as I showcased here. The destruction system overall is very well done, and it's very similar to previous games in the series. The problem is that there's not a lot of buildings on the map. And that's more of a fault of the map's design using bigger structures in order to create map flow, in which if you start destroying these things, the map flow changes drastically. It's just DICE have never completely found this fine line between is destruction too much or is it too little. I think in the future, if Battlefield 2042 creates a map similar to maybe Arras in Battlefield 5 or even Arca Harbor from Bad Company 2, which features multiple destructible buildings in a tight space, I think a lot more people will come to appreciate Battlefield 2042's destruction overall. So overall, while 2042 may seem like it's not very destructible, I would argue it is a step in the right direction for a lot of things. However, there are issues. I don't think that some buildings should have this weird black layer around them that doesn't allow for destructibility. I think these buildings on Manifest should be fully destructible. I think they should be collapsible if you destroy enough of the walls. And I think that you should be able to tell when some buildings are destructible and when some are not. I also think in the future that if DICE decide to make new map, that there is a bit more consistency overall with what can be destroyed and what cannot be destroyed.